People said this giant mountain troll was spotted in 1942, but now the mystery has been unraveled. Whether it be the towering Goliath bested by David in the Bible, the one-eyed Cyclops of Greek mythology, or the giant at the top of Jack's fairy tale beanstalk, gargantuan beings have been a cornerstone of humankind's storytelling for millennia. And for as long as the legends have persisted, you can bet some credulous people have hunted for evidence that these outsized creatures really exist. Some of the earliest accounts of giants are recorded in the Old Testament of the Bible. The giant Nephilim residents of Canaan, for example, are described with awe in the book of Numbers. Moses apparently sent some spies to the region to check them out, and when word came back, it wasn't good. The spies claimed that it was impossible to attack the mighty Nephilim, saying, "We seem like grasshoppers in our eyes, and we look the same to them." Moses was therefore advised to hop it. Then there's the best known of the biblical giants, Goliath. The book of Samuel describes the massive man as being 6 cubits and a span tall, which means he measured a mind-numbing 9 feet 9 inches. Goliath challenged the Israelites to put forward a warrior to fight him single-handedly. And the doughty David, of course, skillfully used his sling to fire off rocks and bring the fearsome giant to his knees. Contemporaneously, Armenian mythology includes the story of Hoax, a giant who founded the nation and is also believed to have helped build the Tower of Babel. Author Arpine Kachadorian's 2016 work, David of Sassoon, An Introduction to the Study of the Armenian Epic, underlines Hoax's supremacy. She wrote, "Among the giants he was the bravest and most famous, opponent of all who raised their hand to become absolute ruler over the giants and heroes." Needless to say, the Greeks had a word for such monsters. Ancient Greek mythology had the gigantes, the term from which the word giant was derived in the late 13th century. Some of the Greek giants were in fact believed to be entombed deep within the earth, and it was the restless writhing of those fearsome beings that, so it was thought, caused earthquakes and volcanoes. The Greeks held that the gigantes were born of Uranus, god of the sky, and Gaia, goddess of the earth. Not bad going, because the couple had earlier begat another supersized race, the Titans. The Greeks also gave birth to the legend of Cyclops, which was later taken up by the Romans. The Cyclops was a formidable giant with a horrifying characteristic of having just a single eye set dead center in his forehead. One of those Cyclops giants, the enormous man-eating Polyphemus, was included in epic poem of Odyssey by Homer. There, the poet described him as a savage being with huge strength, knowing nothing of right or law. Norse mythology also had a rich vein of tales involving gigantic men. These giants were called the Jötnar and were a threat not only to the humans of their land, but Midgard and also the Norse gods themselves in Asgard. The enraged Thor, god of thunder, killed one of the Jötnar, Geirröd, after the giant hurled a red-hot ball of iron at him. Thor threw the projectile back and it smashed into Geirröd's head. Well, he started it. So the idea of powerful giants is firmly entrenched in mythology and, it would seem, the human psyche. Perhaps this is why so many people have expended such energy in trying to find conclusive evidence that these beings really do exist. And this desire has given rise to some outstandingly elaborate and entertaining hoaxes over the years. One such tall story became known as the tale of the Cardiff Giant. In 1869, men were digging a well on land owned by one William C. Stubb Newell in Cardiff, New York State, when they were said to have discovered a 10-foot tall, petrified human figure. Newell quickly began to exploit this find by charging an eager public 25 cents each to view the supposed giant. Indeed, a couple of days later, the spectator fee had risen by a gargantuan 100% to 50 cents. But in fact, the giant had been dreamt up by a tobacconist New Yorker called George Hull. The cigar man was an atheist who apparently got into a theological set-to with some Methodists about biblical references to giants. Piqued, Hull subsequently instructed a craftsman to carve a giant man from a large slab of gypsum. He then planted the statue on Newell's land and waited patiently for a year for its discovery. Newell just happened to be his cousin. The hoax was soon spotted for what it was by academics, though, with one paleontologist from Yale saying it was a most decided humbug. Nevertheless, Hull was paid $23,000 for the giant by a consortium that exhibited it in Syracuse, New York. Showman P.T. Barnum in fact made a replica that he put on show in New York City. But it was one of the consortium, David Hannum, not Barnum, who first said, "There's a sucker born every minute." He was referring to the people in line to see the Cardiff Giant, and you can still see the original sculpture at the Farmers Museum in Cooperstown, New York. An even earlier discovery, in 1705, cannot exactly be classed as a deliberate hoax. It was more in nature of a firmly held delusion. A Dutch farmer working near a village in Claverack, New York, came across a huge tooth as big as a fist and weighing 5 pounds. Then Edward Hyde, Lord Cornbury, the British governor of New York, paid the lowly farm worker a glass of rum for his mysterious artifact. A bit of an oddball, Cornbury was convinced that he had in his possession a genuine tooth from a biblical giant. Perhaps he was a scholar of the book of Genesis with its reference to giants in the earth before the flood. In any case, a century or more before knowledge of dinosaurs was commonplace, people picked up on Cornbury's idea, and he now began to believe in the existence of a hitherto undiscovered species, the Incognitum. This word translates from Latin as unknown. Huge bones were also discovered close to where the tooth was found in Claverack. This in turn gave rise to the idea that the bones must have belonged to giants as tall as 60 or 70 feet. Cotton Mather, the Puritan minister from New England, quickly got in on the act. He claimed that the Incognitum find meant America was once home to biblical giants, in comparison of whom Og and Goliath and all the sons of Anak must hardly be so much as pygmies. However, other residents of America at that time thought Incognitum ivories looked awfully familiar. When similar teeth and bones were discovered in South Carolina, African slaves recognized a resemblance to those of elephants from their homelands, and so it turned out that the Incognitum bones were from a prehistoric ancestor of the elephant. Cornbury and crew had been celebrating mastodons, extinct pachyderms that had roamed America thousands of years previously. Moving nearer to the present day, in 2007, the editors at National Geographic magazine felt the need to publish an article to refute an online rumor. The publication denied claims that its researchers had discovered the bones of a giant. The doctored photograph you see here was created as an entry in a website's competition for archaeological hoaxes in 2002. 2 years later, it then became an early viral internet meme, and the made-up montage had a reprise yet again in 2007. Staff at the National Geographic were understandably miffed by some articles accompanying the photo. They included one of an Indian monthly magazine, Hindu Voices website in 2007. It included the line, "Recent exploration activity in the northern region of India uncovered a skeletal remains of a human of phenomenal size." The piece went on to say that a National Geographic team, India Division, with support from the Indian Army since the area comes under jurisdiction of the Army, were responsible for the find. All utterly fake news. Another photograph which, to say the least, has caused its fair share of controversy is this one. It was purportedly captured in December 1942 by crew members of a British Royal Air Force flight. The plane was, so it's claimed, flying somewhere over occupied Norway at the height of World War II. But if this guy was fighting alongside the Nazis, the Allied powers would have needed to up their game considerably. What that somewhat murky monochrome image is supposed to show is the mysterious Great Norwegian Mountain Troll. It's shown making its way through the snow on a hill covered with forest, dwarfing the trees below. And it really is a photograph of a troll, but a fictitious one. The image of the giant figure is taken from the 2010 film Troll Hunter. It's simply been transposed onto a generic picture of a forest by someone with little better to do. Troll Hunter is a Norwegian mockumentary in which some students seek out one of the cave-dwelling giants of lore. The hunters then discover that the troll's existence has been hidden from the public by government forces, and since the film premiered in 2011, the fake photograph was most certainly not taken in 1942. The spoof shot was created somewhat after the release after Troll Hunter, and clearly with the help of imaging software. What a giant disappointment. Please share this video with your friends below.